kind you don't even notice at first, the kind you confuse with boredom or restlessness or just another bad day, but it keeps showing up in your thoughts, in your sleep, in the moments when no one's asking anything from you, and you realize you have nothing real to give because you're not tired, you're misaligned, you've been performing a version of life that looks fine on paper but feels like prison in your chest. And the scariest part is, no one sees it. They think you're good, put together, stable, but stability can be a form of collapse. It's just the kind that happens in silence, the kind that doesn't scream. It hums, and you've been hearing that hum for a while now, in traffic, in the mirror, in those small, unbearable flashes of awareness when you realize, this can't be it. That's the moment everything changes, not because something breaks, but because something inside you refuses to stay silent anymore. It doesn't need permission. It doesn't need a plan. It just whispers a question you can't unhear. What if this entire life isn't actually yours? Not the job, not the routines, not the version of you that shows up and smiles and plays along. And once that question lands, you don't go back to sleep. You might pretend for a little longer. You might keep moving, keep showing up. But something's shifted. The story no longer fits, and the author is missing. It always happens at night, not because the night is magical, but because it's quiet. No notifications, no noise, just you and the truth you've been trying to outrun. And for the first time, you can't distract yourself. You can't perform. You can't pretend. There's no one to impress, no one to protect, no one watching, just you. And the voice, the one you've been muting with busyness, with goals, with scrolling, with trying to fix everything but yourself. But tonight it's louder, not because it changed, but because you finally shut up long enough to hear it. It doesn't scream, it doesn't beg, it just points to everything you've ignored, to the life you've built like armor, to the version of you that exists just to survive the day. And it asks, are you willing to keep living like this just because it's familiar? That's the question that breaks something. Not your body, not your schedule, your illusion. The illusion that time is infinite, that change can wait, that your soul can survive in a system that treats it like an inconvenience. And once it breaks, you're not confused anymore. You're clear, not because you know what to do next, but because you finally admit, this story can't continue. Not like this. And that clarity, that surrender, that's not weakness. That's the beginning of authorship. You don't know what the next chapter looks like, but for the first time, you know you're done living someone else's ending. This is the part where most people turn away, not because they're weak, because they've been trained to fear the unknown more than they fear regret. They'll tell themselves it's not the right time, that they need a plan, that things aren't that bad. But deep down, they know, the longer they wait, the more permanent the wrong life becomes. So they settle. They decorate the cage. They optimize the script they didn't write. But you're here because you feel it. That ache, that pressure, that unexplainable pull towards something real. Not perfect, not glamorous, just real. And here's the truth. You don't need more time. You don't need more clarity. You need to decide that this is no longer acceptable. Because the life you want, it doesn't come with better conditions. It comes with braver choices. And it can start right now. Not next year. Not after another breakdown. Not when you feel ready. Now in this moment. All it takes is one sentence. I'm done living like this. That sentence doesn't fix everything,
but it burns the old script. And in the ashes, you can finally write something true. If this feels like you, if tonight's the night you stop lying to yourself, subscribe and hit the bell, because the next video will show you exactly how to destroy the story that's been destroying you, and why that destruction is the most honest thing you'll ever do.
You don't need to fix your past. You need to stop living in it. Stop dragging its stories into every conversation. Stop using its pain as your personality. Stop measuring your worth by what happened to you. Because healing doesn't mean erasing the scars. It means choosing to stop bleeding on purpose. And that's where the real rewrite begins. Not with a vision board, not with a morning routine, but with a funeral. You bury the version of you that was built just to survive. You say goodbye to the life that looked fine, but felt fake. You let go of the people who loved the mask, but never met the face. And then you begin, awkward, scared, uncertain, but real. You write new pages, not because you know how the story ends, but because you're finally the one holding the pen. You don't need permission. You don't need applause. You don't need anyone else to understand. Because they weren't there the night you decided. They didn't feel the shift in your chest. They didn't hear the sentence that broke the cycle. I want my life back. That's not a quote. It's a declaration. And declarations don't need validation. You stop explaining your change. You stop asking for grace. You stop trying to bring your old self with you. Some versions of you don't get to come. They served their purpose. They kept you alive. But now, you're not trying to survive anymore. You're ready to live. Don't be surprised when everything tries to pull you back. Old friends who only knew the version of you that said yes. Old habits that whisper comfort in the voice of nostalgia. Old thoughts dressed up as logic. Because the moment you step out of your story, everything inside it will beg you to return. But you're not that character anymore. You don't need to keep proving your worth through burnout. You don't need to earn love by erasing your boundaries. You don't need to stay in places just because you're good at surviving them. That's not growth. That's delay. The old life isn't evil. It's just finished. It taught you what it needed to. Now it's your turn to let it go. And yeah, it'll hurt. You'll grieve things that never even made you happy. You'll miss the comfort of being misunderstood, because at least it was familiar. But then something wild happens. You wake up one morning and the weight is gone. Not because the world changed, but because you stopped holding it all for everyone else. You're lighter, clearer, stranger to the people who thought they knew you, but finally, known to yourself. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to explain your silence. You don't need to rehearse being lovable anymore. Because this version of you, the one who chose truth over performance, is the one that finally feels like home. This isn't a comeback, it's a rebirth. Because you didn't just fix your life, you buried the version of you that made it tolerable. And now, the blank page isn't scary, it's sacred. You don't need to know the whole plot. You just need to write your next sentence with honesty, with presence, with your own voice, no matter how shaky. You don't need to inspire anyone. You don't need to prove you're healed. You don't need to turn your pain into a brand. You just need to live in a way that your past self wouldn't believe was possible. You speak differently. You move differently. You're no longer begging the world to choose you, because you finally chose yourself. That night, the one where everything broke, that wasn't the end. That was the beginning. The night you stopped asking for more time. The night you stopped bargaining with your potential. The night you said, I'm not waiting for a sign. I am the sign.
So now I'll ask you this. If tonight was your moment to change the story, what's the first line you'd write? Tell me in the comments.